Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very excited to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So now, let's begin our story journey for today. The autumn in Chicago brings a chill, fallen leaves dancing with the wind, as if paving the way for the truth about to be revealed. Harlan stands in his community coffee shop, Veterans Corner, which he has run for 15 years, gazing at passers-by through the window. In his hand, he holds a photograph that he accidentally discovered in his wife Laurel's phone album. In the photo, Laurel is leaning against a man's embrace, with a smile so radiant it hurts, an expression he hasn't seen in their 20 years of marriage for a long time. That man, Harlan recognized him. Reed, Laurel's college boyfriend, with whom she had been in a relationship for 4 years and even been engaged. Their relationship ended when Reed left Chicago for work reasons, while Laurel chose to stay. A year later, Harlan, recently discharged from the military, met Laurel at a veterans gathering. They quickly fell in love, married, and built a family. That was 20 years ago, and now, Reed has returned, evidently re-entering Laurel's life. "Dad, why are you home so early today?" His daughter Marlene came down from upstairs, with a hint of discontent in her voice. She had just turned 17, and her rebellious phase was particularly intense. "The coffee shop had few customers today, so I closed early." Harlan locked his phone, trying to keep his voice calm. "Where's your mom?" "She has clients. Said she'll be back in the evening." Marlene shrugged, her eyes glued to her phone. Harlan nodded, but he clearly knew that Laurel had no appointments today. As one of the most popular high-end pet groomers in Chicago's North Side, he knew her schedule inside out. 3 months ago, he had begun to notice unusual changes in his wife. Frequent overtime, mysterious phone calls, and those inexplicable weekend professional seminars. This wasn't the first time Harlan had been suspicious. 3 weeks ago, Benson, a regular customer at the coffee shop, casually mentioned that he had seen Laurel with a man at the suburban baseball field, behaving intimately. That man was the community baseball team's coach who, according to Benson's description, was Reed. "They didn't look like just friends. Buddy, I'm sorry." Benson patted his shoulder, with eyes full of sympathy. That night, when Harlan was reviewing his wife's social media, he found more clues. Laurel's Instagram showed a fixed time slot without check-in locations, and that time slot always coincided with her supposed work times. Harlan took a deep breath and pulled out his phone to call Private Detective Thompson. In the veterans circle, Thompson was a trusted person who had helped several veteran brothers deal with similar issues. He needed evidence, not just for the impending divorce proceedings, but also to face himself and accept this cruel fact. The detective's report came faster and with more details than he had imagined. Thompson not only provided photos and videos of Laurel and Reed meeting, but also uncovered some shocking information. Reed had returned to Chicago 8 months ago, working as an insurance claims adjuster and community baseball team coach. The reunion of Laurel and Reed was not accidental, but carefully arranged. Reed had specifically sought out Laurel's pet grooming services to reappear in her life. "From my observations, their affair has been going on for nearly 4 months," Thompson wrote in his report. "They often meet at a high-end hotel in the north of the city, at least twice a week." Interestingly, Reed recently applied to his supervisor for a transfer to take over an office in the North Side, right near your wife's studio. That night, when Laurel returned home, Harlan was sitting on the living room sofa, with those photos and the detective's report in front of him. "You're back." Laurel's voice carried a hint of nervousness. She clearly hadn't expected Harlan to be waiting for her at this hour. "Yes, I'm back. And where have you been, Laurel?" Harlan's voice was unusually calm, yet it made Laurel feel uneasy. "I told you. I had client appointments today." She avoided Harlan's gaze and walked toward the kitchen. "Stop lying, Laurel." Harlan pushed the photos to the center of the coffee table. "I know everything about Reed." Laurel's face instantly turned pale, her hands trembling as she grabbed the kitchen doorframe. But quickly, her expression transformed into a strange sense of relief, even with a hint of liberation. "Since you already know?" "Yes, I am with Reed." Her voice was surprisingly calm. "We've found each other again." "Found each other again?" Harlan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're saying our 20 years of marriage ends like this? For your ex-boyfriend?" "People change, Harlan." Laurel leaned against the wall, her gaze firm. "I once truly loved you. but Reed and I have a connection you could never understand. When I saw him again, I realized what I've been missing all these years. Missing what? The opportunity to betray your family. Harlan's voice finally showed anger. Or have you always regretted marrying me? I don't regret marrying you, Harlan, but I won't apologize for pursuing true happiness. Laurel's gaze turned sharp. You've been immersed in your coffee shop and veteran stories, while I needed more. Reed understands me, supports my career and dreams. And I gave you 20 years of loyalty and a family. Harlan smiled bitterly, feeling a weariness he had never experienced before. Tomorrow I'll contact a lawyer and start the divorce process. Dad, you can't do this. Marlene suddenly appeared on the stairs. She rushed down and stood beside her mother. Mom has the right to pursue her happiness. Happiness. Happiness built on betrayal and lies. Harlan looked at his daughter, heartbroken. Marlene, did you know about all this? I know Mom has been happier lately, happier than ever. Marlene held her mother's hand. Reed makes her smile, while you only make her cry. You even know that man? Harlan looked at his daughter in disbelief, feeling his entire world collapsing. He's a good person, Dad. He's Mom's true love, and she has the right to be with him. Marlene's eyes sparkled with rebellion and stubbornness. You just don't want to accept reality. Harlan silently looked at his wife and daughter standing together, and suddenly realized that he had lost them. No, perhaps he had never truly had their hearts. I'll move out tomorrow, he finally said, his voice low but firm. Marlene, if you choose to stay, I respect your decision. But I hope you remember that true love isn't built on deception and betrayal. The following days were like a nightmare. Harlan moved into the small apartment above the coffee shop and initiated divorce proceedings. He had originally hoped this would be a dignified separation, maintaining a minimal level of dignity, especially for Marlene's sake. However, he soon discovered that Laurel and Reed already had other plans. She demands 50% ownership of the coffee shop, citing it as community property during the marriage. Pierce, the lawyer, reviewed the documents with a serious expression. Considering you opened the shop with your military pay and your father's inheritance, this demand is clearly excessive. But her lawyer is very aggressive. Is she crazy? That shop is everything to me. Harlan couldn't believe it. What does she want? To destroy my life? I'm afraid it's more than that, Pierce continued. According to our investigation, Ms. Laurel and Mr. Reed have already begun living together. And they seem to be planning to sell the coffee shop to invest in some high-end pet grooming chain project. This news hit Harlan like a heavy punch to the chest. His coffee shop was not only his livelihood, but also a spiritual refuge for him and many veteran friends. Every corner recorded their stories and friendships. Now, Laurel and her new love wanted to take all this away to satisfy their ambitions. What broke Harlan's heart the most was Marlene's attitude. She not only chose to live with her mother, but also spread rumors at school, saying that her father had become difficult to deal with due to post-traumatic stress disorder, which led to her mother leaving. These rumors soon reached Harlan's ears, and some of his acquaintances even began to look at him strangely. Don't mind those gossips, old friend. Benson comforted him. We all know you and what kind of person you are. But these consolations couldn't heal the wounds in Harlan's heart. 20 years of marriage had resulted in such betrayal and defamation. Fortunately, truth has its own way of surfacing. On a cold afternoon, an unfamiliar woman walked into the coffee shop, introducing herself as Vanessa, Reed's former colleague. I've heard about your situation, Mr. Harlan, and I think you should know some things. Vanessa's eyes were full of sympathy. Reed is not the perfect person you might imagine. In the insurance company where we worked together, he was warned multiple times for professional ethics issues. His eventual departure was also because he was found making private agreements with clients for personal gain. Why are you telling me this? Harlan asked, his heart racing. Because I too was a victim of marital betrayal. Vanessa's gaze was firm. More importantly, I believe the court should know the truth. Reed and your wife's relationship began with betrayal, and their actions shouldn't be rewarded. Thus, the direction of the divorce case began to change. Pierce, the lawyer, found more evidence of Reed's unethical professional conduct, proving his unreliable professional and financial record. More crucially, they discovered that Reed had already begun influencing some of Laurel's wealthy clients, seeking investments for their pet grooming chain. And these activities were unregistered and unauthorized. When these pieces of evidence were presented in court, the situation changed dramatically. The judge clearly stated that the coffee shop, as Harlan's former military entrepreneurial project, should belong entirely to him, and Laurel had no right to claim it. More importantly, the judge criticized Laurel and Reed for using the marriage breakdown for commercial gain. In my view, Ms. Laurel, your demands not only exceed the reasonable scope of marital joint property, but also have a certain vindictive nature, the judge said seriously. This is not behavior that the court supports. After the first day of the hearing, Harlan encountered Marlene outside the courthouse. Dad, her voice choked, the rebellion in her eyes replaced by confusion. Go home, Marlene, Harlan said calmly. Not with me, but with your mother. I think you need to reconsider many things. But those things about Reed. Everyone has their own choices, Marlene. Your mother chose him, and that is her right. But rights and right are not always synonymous. Harlan turned to leave. When you're ready, we'll talk. Watching his daughter's silhouette disappear into the crowd, Harlan knew that this nightmare was just beginning. For everyone involved, the real test was yet to come. As the trial continued, more details about Laurel and Reed were revealed. They not only planned to use the divorce to gain the coffee shop's assets, but had also begun to contact some of Laurel's clients to pave the way for their future business plans. One of those clients, well-known entrepreneur Mrs. Sullivan, upon learning the truth, angrily terminated her business relationship with Laurel. I trust your professional skills, Ms. Laurel, but I cannot trust someone who betrays a 20-year marriage and then tries to seize her husband's business, Mrs. Sullivan wrote in a public social media statement. If you can do this to those closest to you, what are my pet and I to you? This statement spread quickly in the wealthy circles of Chicago's North Side, and the high-end client network that Laurel had carefully built began to crumble. One after another, clients canceled their appointments and sought other service providers. Her social media accounts were filled with negative comments, and her former colleagues also began to distance themselves, fearing being implicated in this scandal. At the same time, Reed's professional career was also impacted. When his unethical behaviors were disclosed, the insurance company immediately distanced itself from him, and his baseball coaching position was also suspended. Some parents publicly stated that they did not want their children to receive instruction from someone who destroys others' homes. Although this was not revenge planned by Harlan, it was society's natural reaction to betrayal. Chicago, especially the North Side community, although superficially modern and open, still respected family values and loyalty in its core values. When Laurel and Reed's story became a topic of public discussion, the community's reaction was unanimous condemnation. This is not about moral judgment, but about trust, a community leader said in an interview. If a person can abandon a 20-year marriage commitment, how much credibility do their other promises have? This is an important issue for business relationships and community trust. For Laurel, this rejection was much more severe than she had anticipated. She had originally thought that her professional reputation and client relationships could offset the negative impact of the marriage breakdown, but reality proved she was wrong. Within a few weeks, her income decreased by nearly 70%, and she was forced to close her elegant studio to serve her few loyal clients at home. And Reed, although repeatedly claiming that his relationship with Laurel was true love, began to show discontent in the face of professional and social pressure. His imagined luxury lifestyle could not be realized due to drastically reduced income, and Laurel's increasingly deteriorating mood and reputation also caused him stress. I thought we would have a fresh start, but it seems we've only earned the hatred of the entire city, Reed told Laurel after a heated argument. His eyes no longer showed the passion of before. Perhaps we were too hasty. Maybe we should have waited until your divorce was completely finalized before making our relationship public. Laurel looked at Reed and suddenly realized that their relationship was already beginning to show cracks. The man who once whispered in her ear, "Give up everything for love," was now blaming her decision. Their true love story didn't seem as unbreakable as they had imagined. And Marlene also began to feel the consequences of her mother's decision. At school, her classmates' attitude towards her subtly changed. Some began to question her previous accusations against her father, while others directly expressed their disapproval of her mother's behavior. The most painful thing for her was that she began to doubt her own judgment. Was Reed really as perfect as she had imagined? Was her mother's choice really for true love? Dad, I want to talk to you. One evening, Marlene unexpectedly appeared at the coffee shop with a look full of confusion about Mom and Reed. Harlan put down his work, poured a cup of hot chocolate for his daughter, and said, "I'm listening." "I don't know what to do." Marlene's voice trembled. "They're always arguing. Reed says Mom ruined his reputation, while Mom says he encouraged her to fight for ownership of the coffee shop. I feel like they've both changed. They're not the people I knew anymore." Harlan looked at his daughter's pain-filled eyes, feeling both saddened and relieved. "Marlene, love is complicated, but true love isn't built on lies and betrayal. Your mother and Reed chose a difficult path, and now they must face the consequences of their choice." "And you?" Marlene looked up at her father. "Why do you seem so calm?" "Because I've accepted reality and decided to move forward." Harlan's voice was firm. "Betrayal is painful, but I won't let it define the rest of my life. I have my dignity, my friends, and my career." Marlene nodded silently, a glimmer of respect in her eyes. "You're much stronger than I imagined, Dad." "We all are." Harlan gently patted his daughter's hand. "Remember, no matter what happens, you'll always be my daughter. My door is always open for you." So, the divorce case continued in court, and life moved forward despite the difficulties. Harlan devoted all his energy to the coffee shop and veteran support projects, slowly rebuilding his life. Meanwhile, Laurel and Reed began to face the true cost of their choice. Not just economic difficulties, but also the complete collapse of trust and respect. In Chicago's winter, with wind and snow, the city was wrapped in whiteness. The final hearing of the divorce case was about to begin, and Harlan stood at the courthouse entrance, taking a deep breath of the icy air, preparing to face this marriage's final conclusion. Over the past few months, he had witnessed a cruel lesson about choices and consequences. Laurel and Reed's true love story quickly lost color under the pressure of reality. After losing her high-end clients, Laurel had to accept significantly reduced income and social status. Meanwhile, Reed, with his reputation in the insurance industry irreparably damaged, was forced to switch to a low-paying sales job. The luxurious lifestyle they had imagined became a daily life of financial strain, and this disparity brought dissatisfaction and accusations, making their relationship increasingly tense. "Heard they've moved again, this time to a small apartment in the West District," Benson said in the coffee shop. "It's ironic. The happiness they pursued by abandoning everything doesn't look very happy at all." Harlan just nodded, without commenting. Although Laurel's situation might cause malicious satisfaction in some people, he wasn't that kind of person. He just wanted to end it all and continue with his life. The hearing was briefer than expected. In the face of previous evidence and testimonies, Laurel's lawyer wisely gave up claiming the coffee shop, seeking instead a relatively fair property division. When the judge declared the divorce effective and confirmed that the coffee shop belonged entirely to Harlan, the entire courtroom was unusually quiet. "Is there anything else you'd like to say, Ms. Laurel?" the judge asked. Laurel stood up, with complex emotions in her eyes. "I just want to say that I regret the harm caused. But I don't regret pursuing my feelings." These words caused an uproar in the courtroom. Even her lawyers seemed surprised, evidently not having anticipated this untimely declaration. "Selfish to the end," a voice from the gallery said softly, but it was clearly heard in the silent courtroom. Harlan didn't respond, just calmly looked at his former wife, then nodded to the judge and turned to leave. He didn't need a final statement or moral victory. The facts were already evident enough. After the hearing, Harlan left the courthouse and found Marlene waiting at the foot of the steps. "Is it over?" she asked, with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Yes, it's over," Harlan briefly replied. "Are you okay?" "I moved back to the school dormitory." Marlene's voice was low. "Mom and Reed's situation made me need some space to think." Harlan nodded, understanding his daughter's choice. "You're welcome at the coffee shop anytime." "Thank you, Dad." Marlene hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "Mom wants to know if you'd be willing to talk to her about everything." "No." Harlan's answer was brief and decisive. "We've said everything we needed to say in court. Now, we each move forward." Marlene looked at her father's firm gaze and understood that this was the final decision. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, just acceptance of reality and moving on with life. When spring arrived, Chicago's world came back to life. Harlan's coffee shop business was thriving, and he had even expanded his operation, adding a small bakery offering homemade bread and pastries. More importantly, he had started a new project, a nonprofit organization providing entrepreneurial guidance and support to veterans. Each week, he held sharing sessions at the coffee shop, helping those who had once served on the battlefield find their way back to society. From failure and betrayal, I learned the most important lesson, he said at a sharing session. That is the value of self-respect and perseverance. No matter how life beats you down, as long as you maintain your dignity, you can always rebuild your world. Meanwhile, Laurel and Reed's story took a different direction. As time passed, their relationship became increasingly strained. Reed began to travel frequently, often absent for weeks at a time, and Laurel continued serving her few clients in her small home studio, struggling to make ends meet. Their relationship exists in name only now, city gossip said. That so-called true love didn't even last 2 years. And indeed, on a stormy night, Laurel discovered compromising messages on Reed's phone with multiple women, including a young woman he met during one of his trips. When she confronted Reed, he not only didn't deny it, but blamed Laurel for her too high expectations and emotional instability. You think I'm going to sacrifice my entire life for a stagnant marriage, like Harlan did? Reed said coldly. We've tried, Laurel, but this isn't the life I want. That night, Reed packed his bags and left the apartment, leaving Laurel alone to face a cruel reality. The true love, for which she had sacrificed everything, was nothing but an illusion. The news soon reached Marlene's ears, who immediately went to see her mother. She found the once elegant Laurel now haggard, with a look full of confusion and pain. He's gone, just like when he left Chicago before. Without any hesitation, Laurel's voice was full of bitterness. And this time, I've lost not just a relationship, but also my marriage, my reputation, my career, even myself. Marlene didn't know how to console her mother. She once firmly believed that her mother was pursuing true love and happiness, but now it seemed it was just a mistake built on betrayal and selfishness. Maybe we should tell Dad, Marlene cautiously suggested. Maybe he, what, will forgive me? Accept me back? Laurel shook her head with a bitter smile. No, Marlene, some mistakes can't be fixed, some betrayals can't be forgiven. Your father was right. True love isn't built on lies and betrayal. I understand that now, but it's too late. By summer, Laurel's life had hit rock bottom. After losing Reed, she had to pay the high rent alone and eventually was forced to move to a smaller apartment. Her clients continued to leave, and many high-end pet salons also refused to hire her, fearing her reputation would affect business. What pained her most was the complete collapse of her social circle. Most of her former friends distanced themselves. Community activities no longer invited her. She had become an isolated existence. Meanwhile, Harlan's life blossomed despite adversity. The coffee shop's expansion was completed, and the new bakery was warmly welcomed by the community. His veteran support project also received considerable funding, allowing him to help more former military personnel who needed support. More importantly, he gradually rebuilt his social life and even began dating Elaine, a librarian who had also experienced marital betrayal and could understand his experiences and feelings. You look better than ever, Dad, Marlene said during a weekend visit, having re-established regular contact with her father. The coffee shop has never been this busy. Because life moves forward, Marlene, Harlan said smiling. No matter what obstacles you encounter, as long as you maintain your dignity and perseverance, you'll always find a new path. Marlene nodded, with a look of complex emotions in her eyes. I've been thinking, if I hadn't supported Mom and Reed so much from the beginning, if I had seen the truth, maybe the outcome would have been different. What's happened cannot be changed, Marlene. Harlan's voice was gentle but firm. What's important is learning from it and using those lessons to guide future choices. Like you've done? She asked. I just chose not to let betrayal define my life, Harlan simply replied. Every person has the right to choose, but must also bear the consequences of their choices. When autumn came again, leaves were falling in Chicago, just like in the season when Harlan discovered his wife's betrayal a year ago. However, This year's autumn meant a new beginning for him. The coffee shop was celebrating its anniversary, and people from the community gathered to celebrate this cozy place that had become a landmark in the North Side. At the celebration's peak, Harlan stood in the center of the coffee shop, looking around at familiar faces, loyal customers, veteran friends, new acquaintances, and his daughter Marlene. Over the past year, they had weathered storms together, witnessing how he emerged from the shadow of marital breakdown and rebuilt his life. A year ago today, I thought I had lost everything, Harlan said in his impromptu speech, his voice firm and calm. But now I understand that sometimes, losing is another form of gaining. I lost a marriage that existed in name only, but gained true freedom and new possibilities. The crowd erupted in enthusiastic applause, including Elaine, whose eyes were full of admiration and understanding. Marlene also applauded, with a smile that hadn't been seen on her face for a long time. After the celebration, when the last guest left, Harlan stood at the coffee shop's door, gazing at the autumn sunset. At that moment, he noticed a familiar figure standing across the street. Laurel, silently watching the coffee shop's bustle and joy, with a look full of complex emotions. Their gazes met in the air, brief but heavy. Laurel seemed to want to say something, but finally just nodded slightly, then turned and left, her silhouette lonely and dim. Harlan didn't follow or call out to her. Some paths, once separated, will never converge again. Some betrayals, once committed, cannot be forgiven. This wasn't about hate or resentment, but about choices and consequences, about dignity and principles. He closed the coffee shop's door and returned to the warm light inside, where his friends, his daughter, and his new beginning awaited. The pain of betrayal had faded, and he chose to continue forward, carrying the lessons but without the burden. In Chicago's autumn, two starkly different life trajectories were clearly displayed. On one side, Harlan, who rebuilt a stronger and more fulfilling life from the ruins of betrayal. On the other side, Laurel, who paid the ultimate price for pursuing so-called true love, only to reap loneliness and regret. This is the price of betrayal, not from revenge or punishment, but from the natural consequences of the choice itself. The real punishment isn't losing wealth or status, but losing inner peace and self-respect, losing others' trust and respect, ultimately becoming a prisoner of one's own wrong choices. And Harlan, though experiencing the pain of betrayal, found strength in adversity, maintained his dignity, and finally won true freedom and the opportunity for rebirth. In this game with no winners, he chose the hardest but most correct path. Not forgiveness or reconciliation, but accepting reality and then resolutely moving forward. That autumn evening, when Harlan closed the coffee shop's door, he also closed a chapter of his past. Whatever lay ahead of him, he was ready, carrying the lessons learned from betrayal, but no longer defined by it. The price of betrayal is heavy, he softly said to himself, but the value of dignity is priceless. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.